Vernon, and Dusty hadn't been born yet, but he was in the oven. And we got to Mount Vernon and we didn't have any health insurance. So our family doctor was Dr. Woolery. And of course Donna went to see Dr. Woolery, and then you know, we had a talk with Dr. Woolery, and he said, don't worry about the you know, the insurance, that we'll work something out, you know, on a time payment and stuff. And so I made a note here that Dusty, you started out on a 0 down and monthly payments. And that's really not much different than the way we're encouraged to buy cars and pickups nowadays, is it? So, you know, it didn't take too long for Dusty to get agile and grow up a little bit, and there was toys and stuff like that in the house and in the yard, and Dusty loved construction. He had a Tonka truck that he tried riding down the hill and wore the wheels off of it, and of course he had bulldozers and other toys, but his favorite thing was his struction hat. If you remember, it was struction. Yeah, so, and have you ever heard of a hang-a-burger? Yeah, that's what the hamburgers were back then. They were hanger burgers. And so, you know, we started the boys out going to church young, and that just became a regular thing, and Sunday school and all that, and it soon came time when Dusty had made a decision to follow Christ in his life, and then he became concerned about his younger brother, Darren. And so I didn't get in on this, but Donna heard this conversation that was going on in the bedroom one time, and Dusty was just like Billy Graham leading Darren to Christ. And so that was pretty rewarding to parents, let's say, because we're hoping that the boys would follow Christ in their lives. Another memory is we took Dusty on a hunting trip. Well, we took Darren too, but he was a little too young to hunt. We went all the way to Wyoming. We were hunting deer and antelope, and Dusty scored on both counts, and believe it or not, he had just had his appendix taken about a week before we went on this trip, and there was actually some question of whether we should go or not. And Dusty didn't feel real well part of the time, but we had a great hunting trip, and it was good to have him along and have some success in the hunting. Darren has had some hunting success too, and actually, you know, I taught these boys how to hunt. I'm sure others have had some influence along that line too, but recently I almost have to follow my boys now because I can't ever seem to find anything, and they do much better than I do. Another thing that happened that you know, thinking back into memories, Dusty is a really good shot, and he bought a little rifle. I call it little, a fairly small caliber, called 6mm, and we got a scope mounted up on it and everything, so he was ready to hunt deer. We went to Winthrop one time, and there's a gun range over there by Lake Peregrine, and so Dusty and I were there, and I made this deal with Dusty. I said, you know, whoever shoots the best here will be good, and whoever shoots the worst has to buy supper tonight. And we were camping out over there, so we were planning on going to the restaurant. I never did teach Dusty how to cook very well. But anyway, I ended up buying supper that night because Dusty put 3 rounds, and I kept looking at that target thinking, no, he missed it completely with that third shot. But no, there was actually 3 holes. They were so close together. And I was thinking, while I was kind of putting my thoughts together, I'll bet you the Marine Corps was really glad to see a kid like that come through their program. Um, uh, you know, we kid those Marines that they like to spray and pray, but Dusty is he's very accurate. Let's see oh, Dusty, 16 years old, time to drive. Dusty bought a Nissan four-wheel drive pickup, and it wasn't the sharpest vehicle on the road, but it was good transportation. But anyway, Dusty and his friend Garrett were out goofing off on a Friday or Saturday night, and they were driving out to where Garrett lives, and somehow they must have had the radio turned up so loud or something. The bed liner lifted up and out of the box and blew off into a farmer's field. Dusty came home that night. He said, "Dad, I don't know what happened. I lost my bed liner." I said, "What do you mean you lost the bed liner?" "Yeah, the bed liner's gone out of my pickup. I can't figure out what happened to it." Well, anyway, about 3 days later, Garrett's dad spotted it out in the middle of a field. And I thought to myself, how could you lose a bed liner out of your pickup and not know it? But anyway, there's a kind of a funny thing. And then one of the other things about driving, you know, Dusty and Nate Rindall were headed to Camp Bighorn. And Dusty had a little newer pickup by then. He had a black Chevy, real nice looking truck. And of course, Nathan and he had probably been up all night. Dusty fell asleep while he was driving. And Nate was already asleep and coasted off the road. And Dusty managed to hit one of those markers along the side of the road, which it really woke him up in a hurry when it hit the rearview mirror and all the glass broke out of it. And then that marker slapped the left rear fender on the pickup and put a dent in it and stuff. And of course I apparently shook it off. He wasn't a Marine yet. A Marine would have just shook it off.
We had to change our shorts though.
Yeah. They went on to camp and I never found out about it until a week later when they came home. Of course, he almost had to confess, "Dad, I did a little damage to my pickup." So I finally heard the story. I hope what he told me was true. One of the things that I was asked to speak about here about Dusty is character. And I know that some people would say Dusty's a real character sometimes when they're having fun. But then I had to kind of think, well, what does the word character bring to mind? So the first thing I thought of was that Dusty learned the value of work at a young age, and that kind of molded some into his character. I have to admit that he worked with me when he was young, and many times I was impatient, and I really should be apologizing at this time for that, Dusty. I know I was impatient with you because you were learning so many things, but I will say that when you learn it well, and you perform well.
Oh, thanks, Dad.
I would say that, I guess I already said this, he's a fast learner, and he's not afraid to tackle the unknown. So I think that's part of your good character. I think the Marines shaped his character some too. He is a true and loyal American Marine. And the Marines know how to develop character to a much higher level than most of us are used to. I know that he's loving and caring and honest. You give him a job, and he wants to do it as best as possible. He worked in our shop for 18 years, or maybe 19. I didn't look that up, but the reason that he left us is because he did such a good job of restoring this M55 8-inch howitzer that belonged to the museum down in Everett. And soon after they got that restoration back from our shop, they put out the word that they needed some help down there, and they hired Dusty right off. So I will say that we miss you, son, at our shop, but we're very happy for your new job and the opportunities that are available to you there. You know, I'm humbled a little bit. Tonight I'm welcoming Dr. Aaron Smiley into the family. And I don't recall that we've ever had a doctor in our family. Where's my mom? Mom, do we have any doctors in our family?
Yes.
We do.
Well, yeah.
Dr. Aaron?
Grandchildren.
Oh, grandchildren.
Dad's brother. No?
No, I don't think so.
Was not a doctor.
Well, anyway, we'll vote on it later. I know that she's a very caring and loving person as well. I mean, you can tell it from her occupation. She's studied and practices helping people recover from bodily injury through her work, and it takes a special person to do that kind of work, and we thank you for that. We appreciate it as well. Dusty, of course, is a caring and loving person too. He fights fires, and not only that, but he's worked very hard at studying first aid, and he's able to help people that are in emergency situations. And so I think that you two make a great married couple. You both care for others, and I think that's wonderful. I also thought too they're pretty good at hand and foot, and they've been trying to teach me, but I'm a pretty slow learner on that deal. So, am I out of time yet?
Close.
I've only got 16 more. No. So I was asked to also maybe impart some advice. And I don't know, I thought at first, boy, why should I be giving him some advice? But then I thought of a whole list of things. You know, Donna and I celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary as of August. And August 12th, as a matter of fact. And so then, thank you very much. You'd think that we'd have some sort of advice, wouldn't you, after 50 years together? So I was thinking back to some of the things that we talked about when we were first married and first contemplating marriage. We agreed some 50 years ago that splitting up was not really an option, and we agreed that both of us would need to give 125% towards the marriage, or it might not succeed. We also agreed on biblical truths and doctrine, and made sure that we were in agreement on those things, or would be able to adapt to one another, and we were able to do that. We agreed that I'd work outside the home and she'd work inside the home, especially while the kids were small and growing up. So I think that helped out in our agreement, and could be some advice to you too. We agreed that we would introduce our kids to proper living, to school, to church, vacations together, and maintaining family relationships. And we taught and demonstrated respect for our elders, our veterans, and our country, the United States of America. So those are some pieces of advice that I can pass along. I think that Dusty and Aaron already are planning on doing what is right and long-lasting, and that together they will succeed. So, thank you.